How'd you like the new intro?
Badass, badass.
I like that.
That's a member of the community, Mark Marianelli, aka 6 a.m. Comics. He's been doing like little versions of us in a wrestling game and putting us in a ring like so we can beat each other with like steel chairs. And
Dude, that was when I seen that.
he
I
got
was
you
like,
exactly, dude. With
I was
the
like,
logo.
well, I seen it, and I was like, is that me?
Yes.
And then I noticed he had a Doc. How did he get a Doc Salem logo on it?
That was pretty good.
Oh, I've done that
was-
before. You just like cut and paste, and then like the games allow you to like place those files in there so that you can create like custom characters.
Oh, dude, it was nuts.
And
I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
But so we got Tom Cook, legendary,
Hell yeah.
legendary animator. Tom did shit like old school back in the day. Like they used to actually draw it. You never created. Yeah, now I'm pretty sure like they create a 2D model and go ahead and move it, in what is it, Toon Boom, and do that kind, which is not the same as doing traditional animation. Traditional animation, like there was a beauty to it. You know what I'm saying? Like those old classic, like Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like Rock and Roll was an example. Yeah,
Bill
Heavy
Max
Metal.
Fleischer Popeye cartoons. Those are just astounding.
And Tom had his hand in a lot of those cartoons, like the Smurfs, Brave, one of my favorites, Brave Star.
Yeah.
Brave Star,
like,
very cool. Very cool.
Brave. I got a Brave Star cell that I got from somebody for doing a commission, and I was
That's awesome.
It was cool because it came with the original background, the production background, like painted and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Thundar the Barbarian too, right?
That's right.
I'm
Tom
a
worked on Thundar the
stan.
Barbarian.
Rough.
Oh my god, I love that show as a kid.
Let's talk about Thundar real quick, because Thundar is one of my sweet spots, right?
Yeah,
like,
me too.
Let me ask you,
favorite.
is it true
Was
that
it really?
Frank Frazetta, Jack Kirby, all of those guys actually had a hand in Thundar, like creating the character?
Well, Jack Kirby and Steve Gerber, they were the two that were involved in that. Yeah, so that was kind of one of the great moments in my life when, because I had met Jack Kirby a few times. He lived kind of near me, but he would do like some signings at Passport Bookshop and that sort of thing. And so I met him a few times there. But then it was really shocking to me when I'm walking down the hallway and here comes Jack Kirby, and it's like,
wow.
holy crap, he works here, and that was when we were doing Thundar.
Oh,
That's
man.
fucking amazing.
man.
Pretty cool.
Like,
Even as a little kid, I remember seeing some of those characters and thinking like, man, that looks like Jack Kirby.
and
Yeah,
we were talking about this a little bit, like the animation, at least it used to be, like before, like anime, right? Because anime is a completely different beast than traditional, like American animation. We were talking earlier, like before we started the show, about the Super Friends and like how Alex Toth was able to capture a full-figured person without using a lot of lines. Like it was real minimalism. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, Alex Toth was one of your inspirations, right? Like,
well, like I said, he's one of the guys that I didn't realize who was doing it, who was designing the characters for Hanna-Barbera, but I sure loved the style that he came up with. And because for me, as a little kid, I think I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old when Huckleberry Hound came out.
Oh, wow.
And that was a completely different style than, like, say, Johnny Quest.
Yes.
So when Johnny Quest came out as a kid, that was what was I, like 12 or something like that? So it was really an adventure show instead of just, a lot of funny little jokes. So that's the show that really made me excited as a kid, because it was so well done and the stories were adventurous and, bad guy versus good guy. And the style was so good. And that was the Alex Toth. And
Right.
so I didn't really realize that until I started working at Hanna-Barbera. And then I would get all the model sheets, and it would say, designed by Alex Toth. And I'm like, holy crap, this guy is the reason why Hanna-Barbera exists.
Right.
And
I mean,
so,
even
yeah,
I think something like Space Lab, right, also used his designs.
Yeah. And even if you didn't have Alex Toth design your characters, whoever did copied Alex Toth.
Right.
The Patty Freeling, Ruby Spears, they all realized what he did and just would copy his style. And it made all those cartoons so recognizable so quickly. You'd see the cartoon, you go, oh my gosh, this is like the stuff I love.
Right.
So you automatically watch it.
Yeah, as a kid, like Johnny Quest, when I saw it, I just thought I'm old enough to have had the big 12-inch G.I. Joes. I was like, oh my God, it's like a G.I. Joe show. And I mean, that instantly as a kid, how you just connect with certain stuff. Of course,
Sure.
I didn't know who Alex Toth was. I knew who Jack Kirby was because I was reading comic books.
Yes.
It's only later that I found out, who Alex Toth was, and just the sheer volume of work he did and his impact on American animation.
Yeah, and he was more of someone who, in the comic books, he's known for doing Zorro and some of the things, but he wasn't Jack Kirby in the fact that Jack Kirby had all these ideas and this incredible design sense. Alex Toth trying to draw a Jack Kirby character, it must drive him crazy because it's so complicated compared to his simplicity, But they both, are so equal in their talent that you can't talk about animation without talking about both of them.
Right.
What I remember about Johnny Quest actually, it looked like it was inked, actually. It never looked like, because I know with traditional animation, it's just pencils. It's darkened pencils. But Johnny Quest, it was kind of ahead of its time a little bit.
I'd have to look at that because they used to ink everything up until 101 Dalmatians, and that's when they came up with the Xerox system to be able to Xerox the pencils onto a cell. And but it did have a thicker line, that's for sure. It wasn't a lot of the stuff I worked on. You had to have a really thin pencil, and they didn't want you to make the line thicker, underneath, which you kind of naturally would do if you wanted to make it look like it's got a little bit of a shadow underneath it. And the only show we really did that was Godzilla. In Godzilla, they wanted us to put that thick and thin line on it. So it was really a different style for the animators to draw.
Oh my God, Tom, we could go, if you want to hit every project you ever worked on, I'm telling you right now, it would just be amazing. I remember, in the style of Jack Kirby, they came up with a Silver Surfer animated television series. I think it was around the same time that the X-Men were out. I think it was around that same time. But did you have a hand in that at all, or was it?
No. See, in 1981, all of the actors went on strike. I mean, so John Wayne was on strike, that type of thing. And I was working on Thundar, actually, at the time, and something called Heathcliff the Cat.
I remember that. Yeah.
Heathcliff was voiced by Mel Blanc. They had let Mel Blanc go on vacation. So he took a couple weeks off, and then when he came back, all the actors went on strike. So we didn't have any voice tracks for Heathcliff, because that's what you animate from, is from the voice that he's done. So we ended up getting laid off because they made the mistake of letting him have those 2 weeks off. And so we got laid off, and that's when I caught wind that the union was asking for so much money and such a raise that I knew what was going to happen. because it had happened to me in '74. I was working at the United Auto Workers, welding cars together. It was one of my first really good jobs that I had, and on the assembly line. And same thing, the union wanted more money and more pension and more this and more that, so they closed the plant and moved it to Canada. So what happened here is Hanna-Barbera threatened that if we didn't sign the contract as is, they would send all the work to Japan.
Dang.
Oh,
So,
shit.
so the union in all its brightness didn't sign the contract, and Hanna-Barbera closed its doors. Ruby Spears closed its doors. DePatie Freeling closed its doors. The only studio left was Filmation. And Lou Scheimer, the head of the studio, said, "We're not sending work overseas. This is an American art form. We're doing it here." So that's why when you see He-Man, you see a lot of reused animation, because it wasn't we were lazy. We had to save 25% of our budgets because the Japanese could do a budget for like 100,000 a show. Well, ours were like 200,000 a show.
Yeah.
So to be able to compete with that, we had to lower our, I wouldn't say the quality was worse. It's just we would reuse stuff. Doing new animation.
I mean, it was obvious, right? You would notice it, but then I had a tendency to be more forgiving because, oh my God, the show was on every single day.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a weekly show. It was like a daily show. And I think that's the first one of its. I mean, was that the first animated show of its kind that was like on every single day?
Yeah, it was the first syndicated TV show. Yeah.
Wow.
Was it done live? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it was done live. Yeah, we did. We drew it. Real quick. Yeah. But that was the thing that set Filmation apart, was that we were getting, all of the studios were getting grief from this one woman who was really bound and determined to put cartoons off the air. Too violent. Yeah, they're too violent.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Schlafly?
I don't remember what her name was.
Okay.
But so we were in a constant fight with her, and Lou Scheimer, the head of the studio, knew that he had to do something that was going to be kid friendly. So when Mattel came to us and wanted us to do a special called He-Man, he suggested, why don't we do a series instead of just a special? And instead of, in the past, it was always, okay, you've got the green light to do Groovy Ghoulies. No. Now do Groovy Ghoulies. Well, instead, we changed it over. We said, we're going to do He-Man. Anybody that wants to buy it, it's available. So once it's done, now you can buy the series. So it was on, instead of being on channel 2, 4, or 7, or whatever your channels are in your area, it was on your channel 9, your channel 11, 13. So it was syndicated so that every market in the United States could buy it.
Yeah.
And instead of doing it the other way around, where you're just stuck with it because it's on ABC.
Right.
I can tell you right now, like shows like He-Man, G.I. Joe, and shows like that. Like, I don't think you guys understand the impact that those shows had on kids around that time. Because I can tell you, like me personally, like coming from a home that wasn't exactly perfect, I mean, if I would have learned my lessons from my parent, my dad, like I'd be in jail right now. Like, but these shows, like they touched us in a way, like
100%.
not in a naughty way, but I'm just saying, like
no. You got your moral instruction. You got your moral
Exactly.
instruction from like He-Man, I guess maybe the same way I did from like Captain America. And,
yeah, exactly. It's like morals.
It was done. It was done in a very good way because you never picked up on it. You never felt like you was being preached to, or it was a part of the thing. It wasn't until years later I was shown, like, because I think a lot of the stuff they put out today, I don't really gel with. I'm trying to be nice, So I take my kids and I sit them down. I'm like, look, this is what I grew up with. You watch this. And I sat down with my son and we were watching the episode of He-Man. And it was the one where Teela wants to find out who her father was. And you go through this whole thing, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, that's pretty good. But then at the end, like, He-Man comes out, and he's like, he gives this speech, and he's just like, you know, she looks for her father, and then she realized that Man-at-Arms had been her father the whole time. And I was like, wow, bro, this is some really...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
he would actually come out
as a child, you don't realize how powerful these lessons are.
But would you say, like...
I'm like, oh, man, wow, this is...
Would you say...
I would be teaching my son. This is what I want my son to learn.
Yeah.
Would you say like it gave you a code, like something to aspire to, like a
100%. You see these things and you hear these things, but they're done in this really subtle way to where you don't realize that these things that they're trying to imprint on you. You go, wow, this is I want to be like He-Man.
Exactly, like a heroic code, like
Batman wouldn't do that. I can't do that.
G.I. Joe, He-Man, like these to me, these are the stories that they give us the heroes that are our best selves, and these are the marks by which we strive to hit.
But I think that's lacking in modern animation.
You think? Like I said, they're not responsible custodians of folklore.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what's funny is that with everybody making such a big deal about everything, you can't say Cleveland Indians, you can't have the Redskins, and yet everything else has gone far afield as far as morals is concerned.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a mentor of mine today, and he's 64. And not big on Twitter and stuff like this. And we were just talking.
He's a young guy.
He starts going, he goes, I think I might get like a Twitter account so I and use a different name and see how fast it takes me to get banned. I said, well, that just depends on if you're saying something. I said, let me show you something. And so I go in there and he freaked out because, he doesn't understand it. Like you're saying, everything is so like you can't say Cleveland Indians or you'll get pulled off of Twitter. Yet I can pull up a porn star's Twitter right now, and she's taking it, just right up there. It's just on there, on Twitter, and it's okay. And that's not pulled off. That's okay. Just leave that up there. But God forbid you say Cleveland Indians. God forbid you say something like that. Oh my God, that's got to be pulled off.
Yeah. Well, the morals are very upside down. I mean, I think, especially with the contemporary comics, a lot of these people, they're writing these heroes now as villains. And I think it's because they think like villains.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that commercial where it was who put it out? I think it was Gillette, right? They were destroying the male figure.
Oh yeah, toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity. Like they had somebody that called out one of the paintings I did because they said the chick's boobs were too big and she had too big, her hips were too big. And instead of contacting me directly, they decided to go online and just make a stink about it. Yeah. And I posted up there, I put men don't act like that. And had a bunch of people go, oh, men don't act like that.
Well, it's just like they had this strange idea that fantasy art is somehow supposed to be an accurate representation of reality. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, no, but my point is that isn't that about fantasy art? It's that you're not allowed to act like men, whether you're supposed to. I mean, not in a bad way. What I'm saying is now if you hold the door open for somebody,
but I don't think
like a woman, you get chance for that too.
I'll be honest with you, man. I don't think 90% of the people who are saying these things believe what they're saying. I think they understand human beings are like this. They understand that there is a terrain now that is protected, and from that terrain, if they operate from there, they can have power over people.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a political play.
They don't give a shit about He-Man. They don't give a shit about moral codes.
They're not part of the fandom.
Any of that stuff. It's just they realize I can have some power and wreck shit, regardless of its value, regardless of what it's the purpose it serves, regardless, because it's just about me having power, and somehow that's what this whole thing is, and social media has just made it worse. So
you're right, but I have to bring it back to Tom.
Please
because
do.
I think
Please do.
we're
I'm
going
sorry.
into a
I'm
political
sorry.
rant.
So we're not going into politics, huh?
I'm sorry, Tom.
Tom, if at any moment things get out of hand, go, yo, hello, you invited me.
Anyway, Tom, what?
Yes.
So you said you worked for an automotive manufacturer at was that before you became an animator, or was that did you have to do that while you were doing animation?
No. Well, when I got out of high school, I basically was a gas pump kid. You know, you'd come pulling in, and I'd wipe your window and ask how much gas you wanted and fill up your tank. And so I did that for a little while, knowing that, you know, that's not really a job, but it was at least something that I could afford my apartment. But the first real job that I got was at General Motors. And now remember, I think minimum wage. Well, when I worked at the gas station place, it was $1.50 an hour. Okay, so now just the next job I have was $6.25 an hour. That was a job that you could go buy a house with. I mean, that was good money back then in the early 70s. So I did that until that finally went away, and then I ended up being a bus driver for the transit company in LA, and that paid even a little bit more than the welding job I had. And it was while I was a bus driver that I fell into the animation industry without even, I mean, I never applied anywhere. I just got hired.
Whoa, wait a minute. Stop. So, I mean, you had to go to school at some point, though, for animation. No? So you just walked in and said, hey, I'm Tom Cook?
Nope. I never walked in. What happened was, and I was on my day off of my bus driving, and I went out and got the mail, and it was a bunch of junk mail. Now, normally, as soon as I get the junk mail, I just open the trash can and throw it right in. For some reason on this day, I didn't do that. I put it on the kitchen table. So I went over, made myself a sandwich, sat down to eat, and I saw this little pamphlet that came in the junk mail. And there's a college, Cal State Northridge, it's in California, and it was their pamphlet of what classes they were going to be holding during the summer. So I'm just flipping through this while I'm eating. You know, I'm not going to go to school. I've got a full-time job. And I see this class that's a comic book class. And the description is that we're going to create a comic book character and do a small, 4 or 5 page story as a class. And that's going to be our exercise. And for me, it was like, well, I had a huge collection of comics. I mean, I had every comic Marvel put out from 1960 until 1995.
Want to sell them? No,
I already did. That's why I paid my house off with them.
Yeah, you're right.
Holy shit.
Awesome.
But so I wanted to take this class primarily so I could learn more about how comics were made. But also the teacher was a guy named Don Rico. And I had known that this Don Rico drew Captain America and the Daredevil from the 50s that had like the half red, half black.
Yeah, with the boomerang.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm wanting to just meet this guy, so I'm taking the class just to meet this guy and learn whatever I can about the comics. So anyway, we go to the class. The first day he says, next week, I want you all bring in your portfolios. So next week I bring in my portfolio and it's all Dr. Doom, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, it's all the stuff that I loved that I had drawn on my own. And after the class was over, he said, hey, Tom, can I talk to you? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's the second day and I'm already in trouble. But he goes, look, I work at Hanna-Barbera as a storyboard artist. And we're doing a show called Challenge of the Super Friends. And we have a lot of people that can draw, Fred Flintstone or Scooby-Doo, but they're not very good at the human figure. And I really like your superhero drawings. So they have a program over there every Thursday night where if you're recommended one of the employees, it's free. And you go over there, and it's like a 2-hour class every Thursday night, and they'll basically teach you basic animation talent, skills. And so I said, oh my gosh, yes, if you're going to recommend me, that's just awesome. So I did that. And I mean, I get in there and I'm trying to do my first in between, and I don't know the terminology. Everybody that's in this class has gone to school for this. I'm the only guy that really knows nothing. And so after the third week, they hired 4 of us out of the class. And so I went to the director and I said, I can't tell you how excited I am that I got hired, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, I've done one in between and it was horrible. And he said, well, we don't care because you draw well and we want to put you with an animator and you'll be his assistant and you'll learn from him. So I didn't quit my bus driver job. I took a 3-month leave of absence. Yeah, I took a 3-month leave of absence because I could have crashed and burned. I didn't know anything. Yeah. Right. And after about the second week, the animator that I worked with, name was Rick Leon, said to me, hey, you're really picking this up fast. So I decided, okay, I'm going to quit the job and I'm going to give this a try. And this was in, I guess it was December of '78. And so I accepted the job, and that's kind of how I learned. And then 3 years later, when I was working at Filmation, we were doing a show called Black Star.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yes, yeah.
And I started out doing assistant work on it, but I had been doing little bits of animation at home and bringing them in and giving to the video department to shoot them. Yeah. And then I would show the directors. I'd say, here, this is something I just did. What do you think? And after I did this really pretty elaborate scene of Superman, like coming over the camera out into the distance and then hovering there and then speeding back at the camera. And it really looked nice. And so the director said, okay, I think you're ready to try to be an animator. So let's give you some Black Star to work on. Nice. So that was the first show I got to be an animator on. So it took about 3 years, but see, I didn't know that I had the talent to be able to make things move realistically. Some assistants don't. They can draw really well, but they don't observe how things move, the gravity and the weight shifts and stuff like that. And I could do that. And I mean, I don't know how. I guess it's just a God-given talent because I didn't train for it.
Right.
But so that's how I got started.
They used to have wasn't there a cheat for that too? Like people used to use rotoscope.
Oh, well, we did some rotoscope on He-Man. You could see whenever they ran.
Yes, yeah. I was about to say.
Yeah. They had bodybuilders come in and they would run this way and run that way. They had figured out, because we knew we were going to reuse animation, they figured out what was going to be needed that we could use 2 or 3 times a show. I mean, there were people running everywhere. And so that way, I mean, really, because at Hanna-Barbera, I used to think, this is before He-Man, but I'm there and I'm thinking, somebody has drawn Shaggy walking. Well, somebody drew him walking 2 scenes ago. Why aren't we just using that? Why are we wasting the time to redo, maybe cut to a close-up and use the same walk, and you'll never know that it's the same walk, because the background will be different and it'll be a different size and everything else. So when Filmation started doing that, I said, wow, that makes so much sense. And that really saved us a lot of money so we could compete with these Japanese studios.
Yeah.
And so that was the secret of Filmation. And we got a lot of grief for it because people would think, oh, what a bunch of lazy bums and blah, blah, blah. No, the other thing was to go out of business if we didn't do that.
Right.
But don't you think like anime does the same thing, except like they'll take one still and kind of just pan across it.
They learned
like
they learned how to pan that. They learned how to
it works nicely.
Anime is the worst because it really uses the same drawing and there's no weight at all. It's just going up and down.
Yeah, it just shakes, and then they
Yeah.
have maybe the lips move or something like that.
Well,
Like,
sometimes what they'll do is they'll make the anime suddenly look like a comic book.
Yeah.
Right, and I like that. Like I
Yeah.
enjoy that, but it's also obvious to me. Like that's a shortcut, isn't it?
Tom,
And
if
what
you
they-
want me to
what
kick Brian out of the stream, just let me know.
Any old time.
Okay. Yeah, what they do is they actually will cross dissolve between drawings, so it makes it look like it's moving, but it's really not. You know, it's really the worst animation of anything. Plus, all the characters with their little pointy chins, all they have is a different hairstyle.
That's true.
Their mouth is so big that it's bigger than their chin.
Right.
You know,
Say nothing of their eyes.
Yeah.
Well, it's the thing with that. I think anime's like that whole animation style was just made for speed, right? I mean, for
Right,
speed,
like manga was.
because they, like you said, they were getting paid like nothing. And I honestly, I'm a little pissed off at Hanna-Barbera because I always loved Hanna-Barbera. And so you told me like they threw you guys to the wolves and decided to move all their operations overseas. That just blows my mind that they would do that.
That
Oh,
makes
my
sense
God.
because that's the time when that makes sense because that's the time when what was it, Thundercats came out and Transformers, and then you started to move into because that Thundercats intro.
Oh, that's true.
Definitely
Yeah.
Japanese done. There's no you can.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
totally
right. Well,
different
Rankin
style.
Bass.
Well, G.I.
always
Joe
had a
looked like it
connection
was,
with
done that way too.
Japan.
well,
Like
and
they
then
did a
you
King Kong movie with Japan.
then you've got G.I. Joe, the All-American Hero, that was animated in Japan.
Right.
At least it was written by an American, right? Mostly
Yeah.
Steve Gerber.
See, the thing is, I would have loved to have worked on Thundercats or G.I. Joe or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but they took it away from us, man. I was so
I bet
mad
you
at
that would
doing
have, man. That would have been something. That you got my mind thinking like, wow, I wonder what that would
Yeah,
have been.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
Y'all
Great
do
universe.
Thundercats. Wow.
now just think about this. These are the people that Hanna-Barbera worked with at MGM Studios in the 40s on Tom and Jerry. And they just pulled the rug out from underneath these guys. And, what was I going to do? Luckily, I saw the writing on the wall when the actors went on strike. And I called a friend of mine up over at Filmation because I heard Lou Scheimer say that he would not send the work overseas. Well, half of the union thought that was just a bluff. But we had a contract dispute a couple years earlier, and they said next time we're going to prepare. So they had gone over to Japan and set up studios just in case we decided. Because see, the way that we could hold them to account is that they have shows that they have sold that have to get done by September.
Right.
Well, so the first time they signed the contract, but it was only for 2 years. It was usually 5.
Yeah.
And then they knew that now if we stayed on strike, they could just screw us, send the work overseas, and get those shows done by September. So they had us over a barrel.
right now.
So and
Swear to
the
God.
stupid thing was I was on the side of, because I had lost the job once before because of this wanting too much money thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we were making like, I don't know, $17 an hour or something, and this is in the 70s. I mean, this was really good money.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is buy a house, have a family money,
All right.
And so I was fine with that, but let's find a way to get it so we can work a full year, because it was always September, October, we would get laid off, and then we'd have 2 or 3 months waiting for the shows to be picked up or the new shows to be chosen that were going to be done. So I was only working 8 or 9 months out of the year. So I said, if we're going to get a raise, instead of giving us more per hour, let's get more work so that I can work the year through. And lo and behold, He-Man came along and syndicated TV series. I never was laid off again for the rest of my career because it was a year-round job.
That's another, like,
That's awesome.
I miss that American animation style. Like, you Alex Toth, Chuck Jones. You know, Chuck Jones
God.
is. I mean, there's just something to that can't be duplicated overseas. You know,
I worked for Chuck Jones. There's a movie called Stay Tuned, and it starred Pam Dauber from Mork and Mindy and John Ritter from Three's Company.
I remember.
And there's a sequence in the middle where they get turned into cartoon mice, and there's a RoboCat, and it's a Chuck Jones cartoon right in the middle of this movie. Mm-hmm. But Pam Dauber and John Ritter are the mice. Well, I did all of the cleanup key work on that because I had moved away to Seattle, so I couldn't animate it anymore because you kind of have to be in the studio to animate. But I had a really clean line. I mean, I was a really good assistant animator. I was a good animator, but I wasn't a great animator. I mean, I knew some guys that were just blow you away type animators. But I was a really good key assistant animator. I really had a nice clean line. I could keep shapes, the right size so they don't grow and shrink on the screen. And I had an animator friend that he just said, I want Tom to do all of my key work. So Chuck Jones sent me all this work. I did all these keys. And then when the show was over, I got a phone call from Chuck Jones. And he asked me, do you want to be the head of our assistant department?
Oh, man.
And I said, oh, my gosh, you don't know how much I would love to do that. But I just moved to Seattle to get out of L.A. And he says, yeah, you'd have to be in studio here. And I said, yeah, I can't do that. But just having Chuck Jones ask me to be the head of their studio, that was a huge thing.
That's epic. I was about to ask you, like, when you met people like him, were you ever starstruck? Like, at a loss for words or?
I think I might have been when I first started, but once you get into the business, you end up finding out these people are just, it's just like you. I mean, just like me. Jack Kirby was just a guy trying to make a buck so he could.
Yep.
He was just an amazing mind. But I mean, I got to meet Irv Spence, worked at Hanna-Barbera. Irv Spence worked on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Wow.
There was a guy named Dave Tendler. Dave Tendler did one of my favorite movies of all time, which is called Hoppity Goes to Town from 1941.
Holy shit.
And that was the Fleister Studios that did Gulliver.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Same guys who did Superman, right?
And the Superman shorts.
Yeah. Betty Boop way back in the day, and then the Popeye cartoons.
So I went into Dave Tendler's office and I just said, Dave, I just can't believe you're working here. I loved your stuff so much. And the next Monday, he had every model sheet from Hoppity Goes to Town Xeroxed for me and gave me the full set.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's sweet.
That's
super
awesome.
Nice guy.
That's awesome.
But later on, you get, like I said, you get to meet people, and it's nice because look, this is what always blows my mind because it's hard to believe this happens. But you guys love these cartoons, right? Okay.
Yeah. Of course.
I loved comic books and I loved cartoons, but I'm sitting there at a show and I've got about 3 or 4 people waiting in line to get my autograph or to buy a print or whatever. And I look up and Art Adams is in line.
Get out of here. Holy shit.
And he comes up and he says, Super Friends is one of the things that inspired me to want to learn to draw when I was a kid.
Yeah. No, that's no bullshit. Yeah.
So here I am.
No, yeah.
I'm like Chuck Jones to Art Adams. It's crazy.
We all start out as fans. That's the thing. We all start out as fans.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me that the other day, and I said I had seen Superman, Batman. I mean, I'd seen all of these things in cartoons long before I picked up a comic book. By the time I got to comics, I was already primed. I was already primed up for it, man.
See, I got the comic books first because I had an older brother that I inherited the comic books from, and a mom and pop store that was within walking distance. I had a spinner rack.
I never even knew comics existed when I was watching this stuff.
I was like,
I was drawing all that stuff.
I was like 10 years old when I picked up my first comic book.
Me too. Yeah, it was late, dude.
old,
It was really late in the game
for me with comic books, I was pretty young, and I bought the typical DC stuff because there was no Marvel yet.
Right.
So I had, World's Finest and Superman and Batman Detective. So I had a pretty good collection of those. And I lived on Long Island, New York, in a really rural area. So, I mean, you went out our backyard and it was nothing but woods. And you think New York, you don't think woods, but boy, that's what it was. It was really beautiful. And me and my next door neighbor camped out in the backyard, put the tent up out in the woods a little ways. And we did the old comic books with the flashlight, reading comic books at night. Well, he pulls out this comic, and my jaw drops, and I go, "What in the heck is that?" And he says, "It's a new comic company that just started up. It's called Marvel." And he's got Spider-Man #4, which is, and he bought it off the rack. So, I mean, it was like last week he bought it.
Right.
And I looked at that and I flipped through the Spider-Man comic, and I said, "Okay, I'm giving you everything I've got for that one comic." And
so you immediately knew that this was like revolutionary.
Yeah. Well, and because again, it was like, see what made DC not as good as Marvel is that every DC story was an individual story that had nothing to do with any other story.
Right.
So each thing was it could be a different superhero for all you knew.
Right.
Right.
But with Spider-Man, Peter Parker was this young, shy kid. Hello, that's me.
Yeah.
And not good with the girls. Hello, that's me. So I really got into that, and I would write letters to Marvel, and I would draw little characters and send them in for character ideas that I had. And they would always respond back with a pinup of Spider-Man or a pinup of Fantastic Four.
Get the fuck out of here.
That's great. I know, that's fucking crazy.
I would get a little note from Flo Steinberg saying, "Hey, Tom, your character looks really good. We're so glad you're a fan," And I did that all the time. And then I missed some of the early comics, the early Spider-Man comics. So I wrote to them. I said, "Do you have any back issues?" And they sent me a list of back issues. So, and this is around Spider-Man 30, I guess, when I finally asked them about back issues. So it's been a couple of years, but they still had back issues. So I went and filled in my entire collection. Wow. And they didn't have Amazing Fantasy anymore, but they still had like #6 and #7 and stuff like that. And of course, I was outraged as a kid because they wanted 35 cents each for these back and it's only a 12-cent comic.
Right.
What a ripoff.
Y'all are price gouging me.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Man. You see how far things have fallen, coming from that and hearing a wholesome story like that where you're talking about these people who are answering letters to children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sending, to now where it's just so toxic, the relationship between the institution and the fans.
It's terrible. It's not all like that.
It's not all.
No. I'm saying with indie comics, it's not like that.
No. I'm referring to specifically him talking about sending letters to Marvel Comics and Marvel Comics really relating to him in that way.
Speaking of that, let me throw this out there. Like Tom, like with everything kicking off, with all these guys making like hundreds of thousands of dollars doing like indie comics, have you ever thought about doing something like that? I know you don't like to draw backgrounds, but you can always get a background artist to go ahead and do that for you.
No, I really am not interested. And I mean, at this point, I'm 69, so I don't want to work ever again.
I had my question. My question was similar to Preston's, but it was basically, if you were 18, 19 now, and having your skill set now and knowing what you know now, how would you approach getting in, and what would you be doing in the industry now? How would you go about that?
Well, I would have to be wealthy because I'd want to start my own studio. I'd want to start my own studio and go back and do some stuff that, look, the problem with He-Man was that it was for little kids.
Yeah.
See, and so that if you're an adult now, the nostalgia is what you love.
Yeah.
100%.
The stories are really beneath you as an adult.
100%.
You know, but that's the way it had to be. I mean, that was the whole deal, was to do a show for kids that taught morals. But I would love to take He-Man, or better yet, Thundar, and do just a killer series that still keeps the morals. You could do a terrific story, and you don't have to cuss. You don't have to have murders. You know, you can make it really adventurous, and do just a bang up job on a great storyline that everybody's going to love, instead of putting all this woke crap in it. And, you know, I mean, just that's what I would want to do.
100%.
You know, I'd like to be the one in charge of saying, no, that's not good.
You'd be in crowdfunding, man, because that's.
It trips me out that nobody's done anything with Thundar since that original series.
Blows my freaking mind.
That is one of the most popular underground animated series ever. Like, everybody talks about it, but nobody does anything with it.
All them ones he's talking about: Black Star, Galaxy Rangers.
We didn't get enough of
that. You had all those. Thundar.
Galaxy Rangers was animated overseas.
Yeah, was that Nelvana, I think?
Oh my goodness!
Oh snap!
God forbid!
Sorry,
God forbid.
Tom. We apologize.
Brave Star, it's like all these things, man. Like, seriously, I don't know what to deal with. You know, I don't know.
Brave Star was incredible. Like, I'm dead
really
serious.
Good.
Like that first
feature was good.
Look, here's you got a lead Native American hero, man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You know.
Now, so did you see the feature?
Yes.
Brave Star?
Yeah.
The Legend of Brave Star.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Well, you can notice that Tex Hex, his mustache is flowing in the wind, because what they did is they took us. It was the end of the year, and they usually gave us two weeks off at Christmas time. You know, not as a punishment, but because we were dead tired from working so hard.
Yeah.
But they said, we are going to do a Brave Star feature where you're going to be able to animate more fully. Now, we're still not going to be able to do Disney animation, which we could because we had incredibly talented guys there. Yeah. But we're going to be able to make things move beyond just have them walk in and stand and talk. And so almost everybody I know raised their hand. They want to work. I mean, they didn't take the 2 weeks off. And so we got to do some much better animation. And you could really see that, man, if we only could have put together something like that as a feature for the theater, and had a year to do it, instead of, we had 2 weeks instead of one.
I've watched the Brave Star movie recently, being within the last couple of months, and I can tell you that is one of the most impressive animated films I've seen.
It's very good.
I don't know if I'd put it up there with Heavy Metal, but it was definitely really close to that type of animation.
Yeah,
the reason you can't put it up with Heavy Metal is Heavy Metal took years to do. We did it in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I recommend. I don't know if there's an official version of that out, because I kind of got my copy via nefarious.
Me too.
It was with the DVD set. If you bought the DVD set, it came with it.
Oh, okay, all right. So there has been an official release of that out there. Anybody watching? Go check that out. It's definitely worth hunting down. I
definitely feel very left out
No, Brave Star. Brave Star was incredible.
I love the series. The series was great as a kid. I loved that shit.
No, I'm telling you, if you watch it now,
they're cool.
If you watch it now, it's fucking incredible. In fact, I don't know if you get in trouble for doing a new Brave Star, because it would be because there's a big thing about cultural appropriation and stuff like that.
My grandma is awesome. 1/10 Cherokee, bro.
Well, the thing is, I do a lot of cons around the country, and also I've done some in Mexico City, in Ecuador, in Dubai, and in South America. Brave Star was huge because it was the first dark-skinned hero.
You would think, right?
Yeah, so they loved it down there. So it wasn't. See, this is the problem. is the only people that are pissed off about cultural appropriation are the white people.
I know.
Ain't even that culture,
White college
bro. Ain't even
educated.
that culture, bro.
White.
That's right, Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
White college educated
I'm
people
Italian, so I
have
can
a
throw me in there, Brian.
particular type of stupid.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
That particular
Why
type of
wouldn't-
stupid. I know
why-
what's better for you than you know for yourself.
Why wouldn't you want a character that's an Indian or a black person? Or, well,
Right.
Black Star, I don't know if you guys know this, but Black Star was supposed to be black.
What?
I didn't know
All right,
that.
you
I
gotta
was wondering where
elaborate.
Black Star came. I was like, well, dang, you're not a black
I was thinking
Star.
that too. It sounds almost like a blaxploitation title.
The network
Is
wouldn't
that-
allow us to make him black.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not surprising. That's not
So
surprising.
that's why,
it was like that.
if you look, he's very dark skinned. We
I
made him
thought, so.
pretty
I
dark
thought I
skinned.
remembered that. I thought I remembered
Yeah.
him because he's got black
Yeah.
hair and he looks he's dark skinned.
I thought he was a Native American, to be quite
He
honest.
sort of looked.
Yeah.
Well, he looked to me like he had been like really, really tanned.
Well, I'm Italian, so I thought he was Italian. So I was just like, this is the first Italian,
Well,
character.
it's
I
interesting
love it.
because I watch a lot of westerns, and I remember, like one of the things that's funny about Italian westerns is that like there's only one movie where you actually have a Mexican playing a Mexican.
Well, hold on, Brian.
Right? But
Brian.
let me just get the story real quick.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No.
The guy who was in the series, it was called Pecos, right?
Uh-huh.
And Pecos, rips off the man or whatever, right? It was a series of movies, and this was a white actor, Robert Wood, and he said whenever he went to Latin America, people would stop him in the streets and be like, "Oh, thank you for giving us like a Mexican hero."
Right.
It was like, but I'm not Mexican. It was like, we don't care.
Well, no, it's
thank you for the character.
it's the
So it
same
does
thing
make an
with
impact. It
with
does.
Speedy Gonzalez. Like they tried to cancel
Mexican
Speedy
people love
Gonzalez.
Speedy Gonzalez.
Yeah, they're
I
like,
don't
no,
even-
we fucking love
But,
it. Why,
but that's
cancel
what
it?
I'm saying. I don't think these people are creative. I don't think they don't care about the stuff that we care
They
about. They don't care about the people that they're talking about. They
Yep.
just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't like getting into it all shit, but to me, that something's wrong with them internally.
Yeah.
They're missing something.
Yeah.
They're void.
They're emotionally
angry, miserable
deformed.
people,
We're gonna-
and they want to go out and just spread that shit out there. And if they see something that's creative that brings people happiness, they want to infect that shit. It's parasitic, and they want to infect it and destroy it. And it's I don't know, man. It's some weird shit. I don't know.
You're right.
Can't last forever, though. Can't last forever.
Sorry, Tom.
Yeah, that's all right.
Way to bring it down, Figs.
Well, at least I agree with everything you're saying. So that's
we good.
Well, whenever I've met like any of like the OG like comic creators whose comics I grew up reading, I thank them. I say thank you for giving me comics that didn't talk down to me when I was a kid.
That's what I was telling Tom before we actually got on, was that like I like having guys like him on because not a lot of people, like we were talking about it, and he's like, he sees people at cons that don't know the name Jack Kirby at a Comic-Con.
Sure.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a trip.
that's why we have to educate these people, and and of course not gatekeep, not shame them for not knowing who Jack Kirby is, but going,
Well-
here, come check this guy's stuff.
Tom, we had a bunch of I had a few people on here. I had Joe Vigil,
yeah, he was great.
Bob Hall. And one thing I can say is that the artwork that you guys were pumping out back then, I'm not just talking about animation, but I'm also talking about comics, was so unique and it had so much character. Like now in the age of technology, like I think a lot of digital artists like doing digital art because it includes a 3D model that they can pose and trace over while they're doing their artwork,
Right.
And like you guys, you can tell like it came from up here, and it wasn't. You never used you never used anything as a crutch, to go ahead and do your work.
right. Yeah.
And,
And see, for me, the advantage that I had over a lot of the people that I worked with is I was a comic book fan.
yeah.
So see, when it came to shows like Thundar or Brave Star or Black Star or any of those, I had Jack Kirby posing in my head, and these other people are just posing a mannequin.
Yeah.
Right.
So when I would see a pose that I want that they would give me to use, I would always take it a little bit further and make it more dynamic. like a Jack Kirby pose. And I hope my wife answers the phone here.
Don't sweat it, Tom. This sort of thing happens.
Okay, it looks like no, she got it. She got it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was our home phone. But see, that's what for me. My whole mindset was the power of Jack Kirby, or the sleek, cool drawings of Steve Ditko with everything just twisted up and that sort of stuff. And these other people are drawing from live action in their mind, which is very stiff.
Right.
Yeah, that was one thing about Jack Kirby, is that everything he did had a flair to it. You know, it was like I don't think he could draw somebody just standing there.
Right. He couldn't draw something that wasn't exploding off the page.
Exactly.
If he drew somebody just standing there, it was the best picture of anybody standing there you've ever seen.
Yes. It would look epic. Yeah, no, I mean, like, you know, like these shots that you got of you know, in his and the new gods, you know, the fourth world stuff, you know, you'd see like these characters standing there, and of course they looked like gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's because he was somebody who really understood mythology.
Yeah.
And I always, you know, the Eternals, Machine Man, not such a fan of Machine Man, but
Brian, I swear to God,
you're gonna whack me with your naughty stick. But that's the thing, is his stuff looked. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just going to say part of the thing with Kirby, which is unfortunate, is that when he started doing the New Gods and Mr. Miracle and Forever People, I mean, I love those comic books.
Oh God, yeah.
But the problem is he was losing his eyesight, so he really couldn't draw as well as he did before. But you see any of the Fantastic Four from like maybe number 30 up to like number 80. You'll never see better comic books in your life. And it's the same period with Thor, you know, that same area with the whole Ragnarok story and all that stuff. It is the most incredible, dynamic looking backgrounds.
I know.
He didn't do the square knees that he did later on. So people, you know, they kind of rip on him because of his later work, but he didn't have an inker that would fix. He just had an inker that would ink him. And so they put those squiggles in, and the squiggles, that wasn't really what he did before, but he would do that to indicate a muscle, and they needed somebody to clean that up for him. You know, that was the assistant's job that didn't do that good of a job.
Right.
I mean, one of my earliest childhood memories was of reading a Fantastic Four comic in the back of my parents' car after going to visit like some friends of theirs. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I had like an older brother that I was 6 years older that I was inheriting these from. And I remember going, ooh, Rockman, I love Rockman. And I learned basically how to read from reading those comic books. I would sit there and I would have a dictionary right next to me. In sixth grade, I had a college level vocabulary because if one of these characters, if Reed Richards said something I didn't understand, flip, I had to look it up because what he was saying.
That's Stan Lee. Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Do you know how many games of Scrabble I won at like 13 years old? Because because somebody would quaff their drink, and my mom would say, quaff is in a word. And I said, no, Conan the Barbarian said quaff.
He said it.
Exactly. You know, and that's why, you know, these people like Roy Thomas, thank God he's still around. You know, I feel like such a debt of gratitude to them. Because because there's this attitude that some people have when they're making art for children, which is, it doesn't have to be good. It's just for kids.
Right.
And those people need to be slapped. Because no, if this is for kids, you need to take extra special care because this is the mythology that they're going to be growing up with.
It feels like that Funimation did that with the Masters of the Universe. And Black
they're trying
Star and
at
all
least.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, one thing Tom isn't talking about is that he was a director at some point, like of animation. What projects did you direct?
Yeah, that's See, you really you have to be an animator to know how to direct, because it's timing. You're timing the show, and I can't remember the first thing I did. Well, the first thing I really did, and it really doesn't count that much, but one of the directors at Filmation, a guy named Ernie Schmidt, super nice guy. He was on our softball team. I was the coach of the Filmation softball team, but he. Every week, a different director handed out work, and you waited to see who was going to hand out next and go pick it up from them. Well, he handed me a bunch of He-Man stuff, and he said, "You know what? I'm way behind. So could you just time these few scenes here at the very end of the stack I'm giving you?" And I said, well, "Yeah, I'd like to do that." So I got to do his job, which was directing, and basically what you're doing is telling the animator what you want to see them do in that scene. You might put a few little thumbnail sketches of a pose you might want to see or something like that. So that's the first time I ever really got my feet wet doing that. But when I moved up to Seattle, like I said, if you're an animator, you have to be in the studio, because as soon as you finish a scene, you've got to shoot it on the computer, see if it's going to work right, and if it doesn't, you've got to go back and fix it. So since I didn't have a video room in my house, I couldn't do that anymore. So somebody contacted me and said, "Do you want to direct some shows?" It was a guy that worked in Seattle, also the same thing I was doing, through the mail. And so he got a bunch of shows like, Savage Dragon. We did a bunch of different things. I just can't remember off the top of my. Extreme Ghostbusters, Extreme Dinosaurs.
Oh, wow.
A bunch of things like in the 90s.
Right.
And he said, "Look, I'll teach you how to direct it." And I said, "Well, I kind of know how to direct, so I could do that without any problem." So he was great. So he ordered extra work, and he would just hand it out to me, and I would just take it home, direct it, turn it back to him, and then they'd FedEx it back down to the studio.
I remember. No, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, and so I did a lot of things like that, and then other people would find out about me. Well, I told you I was very clean. My art was very clean. The assistants loved me because I didn't sketch stuff out real rough, so that they could just follow my line and they were going to have a good line. Well, in direction, it was the same way. You get some people that they're like a doctor. Their prescriptions look terrible. You can't even read what they're saying. Mine was all, I print everything in capital letters, and then you have to put these arrows that show where you want the characters to go. Man, my arrows were really clean and sharp and just looked really cool. Sometimes I'd make them 3D.
Wow.
If they had to turn around, I'd draw a 3D arrow,
Right.
Oh, wow.
And so what happened, it was at Sony TriStar. The guy that I was doing work for there said, they're using your sheets to show other people how to direct.
Holy shit!
Wow,
So
that's a compliment.
Did you get any credit for that, Tom? Did they give you any?
I'll tell you, if you look at my IMDb page, there is a bunch of stuff that isn't there, because if you're doing freelance, a lot of times they don't give you any credit.
Right.
Tom says that he was a good animator. I got a feeling like he's downplaying his skills.
Right.
Extreme amount.
Look, I worked at a studio called Bear Animation, and Dale Bear, who just passed away like maybe 6 months ago, I'm really sad, was probably the best animator I've ever known. I mean, and he had his own studio. He worked at Disney. He left Disney, started his own studio, and I was the first person that he hired as an animator. And that's where I worked on Roger Rabbit, the Tummy Trouble short.
Oh, yeah.
And we
Wasn't
did
that shown before the film,
Yeah.
I think? Yeah.
It was before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Right.
And then I also worked on Prince and the Pauper, the Mickey Mouse short that they did, like a feature that was played along with Rescuers Down Under. It was like a double feature. And this guy was that's why I say I'm only good, because he was so good. I mean, I could take all day and I could do something that looked pretty good. That 99% of people are going to go, wow, that's great. Well, Dale could do that in 10 minutes. And it was never he had to go back over something and fix it. It was always just spot on.
Perfect.
I don't know how you can be that talented. I really don't.
He was just drawing and without like any erasing or just.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and he
that's a special kind of talent.
He was very, very quiet, very humble. He would just sit in his office. He was the head of the studio, but really his wife kind of ran the studio because he really wasn't a business guy. Yeah. But because of his studio, people would come to get work done there because of him. So, like, we were doing some Jolly Green Giant commercials.
Oh.
And the Jolly Green Giant was a very simple-looking little character that looked like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Right.
He made it into a Disney-looking character, and everything. The backgrounds were beautiful. The animation was amazing. It wasn't just Rocky and Bullwinkle type style stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think with the new Thundercats, they used.
I worship this guy so much because he was so good.
Yeah. I think with the new Thundercats, they used that Rocky and Bullwinkle type of style.
And it was the new one or the ones from 2000?
New one, the one that everybody
hated.
The
really horrible one. Thundercats Go is what it's called.
Yeah,
and it's like
it was
like
a major down step on the quality of American animation.
Let me put it like this: my 8-year-old little girl, right, who again, I showed her the original Thundercats. She's seen it, and I didn't say too much, and I just showed her. And I mean, at 8 years old, she looks at it and she just looks and she says, "What is this? What is this? You know what I mean? Like I don't want this. I don't want this. What is this?"
Yeah. You can't fool little kids, man.
No, man.
I can't remember what it's called. Like it's chibi animation or something like that. Is that what they call it?
Well, it looks sort of like Steven Universe. You know, they all have what's referred to as the bean teeth. It's like Tumblr. It's like Tumblr art.
Yeah,
that's sort of animated.
That's kind of more. It's called like Tumblr art. It's some. I don't know, man. I think they just made
a little bit.
Sam, are you familiar with that?
A little bit. I don't really know about that Tumblr art, but I know kind of what it's like. It's kind of like when in the early 2000s, I got a job as an art director to do some of the very first cartoons that were put on a computer for people to go out and watch.
Yeah.
You know, during the .com thing, everybody had millions of dollars, and so they started making cartoon series on the computer. And my question to them was, how are you ever going to make any money if you can dial in and see this for free and we're charging you $20,000 an episode? Well, the answer was that they went out of business in a year. So,
right.
But so we had to learn to do it in Flash. And basically in Flash, what you do is you draw, let's see if I can kind of get this. You draw a hand, and then that's called a symbol, and that is logged in your computer so that when you want to move the hand, you just spin it. You don't have to redraw it. You could just move it.
Well, no, that's what they use for Toon Boom now. Like you just
I'm sure that's
take that hand. Thing. Yeah, and then it's basically a puppet. You can just move each finger individually and do a scene by it and record.
With the forearm, you'd have one forearm, you'd have one upper arm and a hand, and you would just move it around so it looked like it was animated. But it's really the same drawing, so you didn't get any foreshortening or anything with it because you couldn't. You just had to move it side to side.
Oh, the animation's really robotic, really robotic.
Yeah.
And see what this is.
No soul.
This is the thing is, like I said, at the Comic-Cons, I do this panel where I kind of go through how I got in the business, a lot of stuff, what I've told you, but then I also go into, different shows that I worked on and stuff and kind of take you right through the thing. And then finally, the last 15 minutes of my panel is step by step how a cartoon was made back in the old days. So from story to storyboard to layout to animation to ink and paint. I go through the whole thing front to back. And I made some sort of mention how I said, nowadays, you don't draw anymore. So you could become an animator and not know how to draw. Whereas that would never happen back in the old days. You had to be able to draw. You could be the greatest person thinking about how things should move, but if you can't draw it, you're not going to get a job.
Right.
So I had
But that makes sense, right?
Yeah, and I had some student girl come up to me and she goes, "I'm really offended by you saying that I shouldn't be an animator because I can't draw."
How hard
And I
did you hit her?
And I said, "Look," I said, "number one, I never said you shouldn't be an animator.
Right.
I said, I just said that my friends who are really, really good animators can't get a job because they can't use a computer.
Yeah.
And you can't draw, but you're taking their jobs."
Yeah.
You know?
But you offended her.
Yeah. Well, of course.
Yeah,
You
you
figure
can't-
everybody.
You hurt her fifis.
But
My
I always take it like music. It's like today in music, you no longer have to play piano. You can just make the computer play it.
No,
Right.
it's
You don't.
Oh, you don't have to be able to
It's
sing.
across. Let me tell you, it's
And then
across.
it's missing
across
something.
the board, Tom. Because I'm gonna tell you,
Yes,
the first
it is.
time I caught that, I was on a construction site, and I watched these plumbers, man, and we were putting in water lines, and they got this stuff called PEX pipe, and basically it's color coded, red and blue. You run your water lines with it, you cut it, it's got fittings on it, you fit it together, done. And I watched these old hands, boy, and they would, you could just see it, and they were just like, what you doing here is you're removing the craftsmanship. Because none of these boys in here who are running these PEX pipes know how to sweat pipe.
Yeah.
They don't know how to run that copper. But that's what you're doing. You're just taking the craftsmanship completely out of it.
Right.
And,
Well,
and it wound up, and it just goes through all.
Good
of it.
analogy, Figs.
If you are a really pretty woman, you can become a multimillionaire singer like Britney Spears.
And not
You know,
ever know how to
Yeah.
hold a tune.
Nope. Can't sing
Yeah.
worth a darn. And you've got somebody like, I mean, I always use this as an example. Imagine American Idol, okay?
Yes. Yeah.
In 1960, and out walks Bob Dylan,
Oh yeah, they would have savaged him.
and they all just rip him a new one because he's completely untalented and can't sing. And
Right.
yet he's one of the greatest singer-songwriters in the history of the world.
Yep.
That's
You gotta,
Yeah.
you gotta
But
add that
Britney Spears-
songwriter.
But Britney Spears is making billions of dollars.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah. Whereas
there's some-
Dylan would have just been like a busker at like
Well, there's a
like
program
subway
called
station.
Perfect Pitch where Brian can sing something and they
Yeah.
can put it in there and make him sound like Britney Spears.
If only he was a beautiful
Well,
woman, he'd have
well,
it.
Well, there's an upside to that technology too. The upside to that technology is that it does make it so that like it's more accessible to people, right?
that's
Like I'm-
exactly it.
and I think that's fantastic. You know, at the same time, when you're a comic book company and you're putting out comic books, you want them to have some kind of a hand-drawn quality. Like that's why, like, I love working with Preston. Like we decided on the thing that we're working on right now was no inks, just pencils, because I love seeing the human hand. Right?
Ink,
I actually-
you want ink out of business is what you want.
No. Don't go putting words in my mouth, Tom. Right? But
Well, Tom, I went backwards. Like I did digital for a minute because I want to learn it because I see everything as a tool and something
Right.
like it can be useful in your toolbox eventually, right?
Yeah.
But I went back to traditional art because I found my OCD wasn't helping me when it comes to digital art.
I would say, no. I haven't dipped my toe into the digital yet, but from what I can see, when you're moving into production artwork,
Well, the craftsmanship goes up too whenever you do traditional.
Well, that's the thing.
you know?
I mean, again, I know traditional, so again, I know the craftsmanship to bring to the digital. But even that aside, I mean, it's like you still got to kind of know what you're doing fooling with that digital artwork. Like,
No, you have to. You have to be an artist. I can't
But
believe
I will
like you don't have to be an artist.
But
and
I
you
will
can
tell you
animate.
that
That's crazy.
that being able to apply technology as a tool in a proper way, because when you're talking production stuff, it's hard. There's so many applications that digital stuff can do that, again, will streamline things. Because I'm sitting there like this and I'm drawing a piece and it's like, man, shit, but that arm's not correct. I got to go in, I got to erase the arm, redraw it. I'm looking at the digital, and it's like, okay, the arms are off. Shit, let me crop it, shrink it, move it, and the ability to take your already talent, but just streamline it. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, but
Now,
you see,
for
Anthony,
individual pieces. Well, wait, but for commission pieces, that has to me, you never be traditional. Ever.
well, no,
I don't know how someone can pay you money, pay you $1,000, $2,000 for a digital piece of artwork.
No, that's crazy.
Understand that.
No.
But here's the thing: what you just said about making it perfect. The character in the art is that it's imperfect.
No,
You
it's
see what
not
I'm
about.
saying? Like,
No, it's not. That, I'm not talking about making it perfect. What I'm saying is when you're laying something down, and I can lay a layer over it, right?
Yeah.
And then I can kind of put my layer down and go, you know what? I don't like that layer. Let me throw that, because I use a light tape. Right, I got to flip this, that, and the other just to check everything. Whereas on the computer, I can just hit this and it flips it.
Well, it's
I'm
just
not
technology.
talking about removing craft. I'm talking about taking craft to a next level and just streamlining.
And that's fine.
There's no replacement for craftsmanship.
Right. I mean, I think that's fine. I think, like, my attitude has always been, when I'm working with an artist, I don't care if you use a computer. Just don't let me see it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the same way, like with CGI, it's best when you don't notice it.
See, back
like
when
these blurring effects and stuff, I can't stand it.
I got hired at Microsoft in 1995, because it's when Windows 95 first came out.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I got hired because that same guy that found out I was living in Seattle, that was doing the directing work that brought me into his company, he got a job, a part-time job at Microsoft, and couldn't take the job and recommended me. Nice. So I went in there, and I went in for the interview, and I had my portfolio of drawings, and I had this drawing of Rover Dangerfield from a movie I did, that this turkey dies, and he's holding the turkey by the eyelid to try to make it look like he's alive still. And so it was a really funny drawing, and I just happened to have that in my portfolio. And the woman that was interviewing me said, "Hey, can I get a Xerox copy of that drawing? I love that drawing. I want to stick it up on my bulletin board here." So I said, "Well, yeah, sure." So she took a copy of it. Well, about a week later, I get a call from her, and she says, "I hired you for this part-time spot, but I think I'm not going to take you." And I was like aghast, And she said, "No, the reason I'm not going to take you is somebody saw your drawing, and they want to hire you full-time to do animation with this new program we got called Softimage." They had bought Softimage, and it was really rudimentary, but it was the first 3D animation software. And they said, "We have nobody that knows how to do animation, so you would be perfect for this." So they sent me down to LA for like 3 weeks, put me up at a hotel and everything to learn this program. And so that's what I basically did at Microsoft. And then eventually I was training. Microsoft sent a lot of games out to different smaller companies to do for them. So they would send me to these smaller companies to help train their computer guys that know nothing about animation, but are really good with a computer. So I would go in and give them tips on how to animate something and make it look more realistic. So I really, again, there's another instance, like I told you, I took that class, and next thing I know, I'm working at Hanna-Barbera. I went into Microsoft, and I end up full-time employee at Microsoft with stock options and everything.
Jesus Christ.
All because somebody saw a drawing.
Did you ever do any 3D? I mean, did you ever do any 3D animation yourself? Animated?
Not in any movies or anything like that. Everything I did was all done for Microsoft, or helping, these other students learn how to use the computer and how to animate in it. But I mean, I don't know if back when Softimage came out, it was really bad. I mean, it was really difficult to do something that looked as good as it looks nowadays fast. Right. Now you've got all these tools that you can actually take the arm and grab the wrist, and then move it in the computer. I had to do this. I had to move this finger, this finger, this finger, that finger,
Oh.
the thumb. Now there's the pose I want. So you had to move every single piece. Now you just grab the whole thing and move it. So I mean, it's so much easier.
That's
I
crazy.
think I think what's missing, and if you look at it, one of the things that's missing today in this industry that we're in is I don't think they use mentors. I just don't think they utilize mentors. It's like you have these creators like yourself, like Chris Claremont, like you have all these people in these industries who great creators, great people.
Wells
It's
of
like,
knowledge.
why are you not utilized? Like,
Well, they had Disney. There was a story that Disney went ahead and fired all their senior animators to make room for all the newcomers, and they had hired the old guys back to
Two
that's what I'm
friends,
saying,
mistakes.
it's fucking stupid.
two
That's-
friends that worked on He-Man with me. Two friends that worked on He-Man with me, and we were in the same room for all that time. They both got laid off at Disney.
That's what I'm saying. Like you have this wealth of experience, of knowledge, and you don't utilize it.
Well, they had to
It's
hire those
weird.
guys. They had to hire a bunch of those guys back to go fix all the mistakes the new guys made.
That's
because
so
they never
crazy.
had the
That's
experience.
such a, but what I'm saying is like
So right.
you would think though ahead of time, like you would think though, man, like why would you? I don't understand why they're trying to fix shit.
Because they're not artists. You know what I mean? They're not.
I heard that. You're right. I heard this.
Well,
that
here's
basically
the suits.
Well,
Here's
I
the
heard
thing.
that the marketing departments are
A
making
corporation's going to be a corporation. So if you got a bunch of senior animators that are making a lot of money, they're going to fire them.
The guy was saying it basically like, man, who was it, man? I can't remember his damn name, but
or it could have been political.
He said,
it could have been
right. What he said was is that today, like he was talking about how Alan Ladd really greenlit Star Wars, but that today Star Wars probably wouldn't get made.
No way.
Because you have the corpse, but the marketing departments are really making the decisions on what's getting made and what's not getting made. And so it's like like you're kind of you don't their view of how they're making entertainment or how they're making this stuff is different than how it was 40 years ago. It's a different mentality.
Yeah, you don't have an Alan Ladd Jr. that's just going to be like, oh, you know what?
Right.
I'll bet on that.
It's weird, man. I don't know.
Well, hold on, wait. Like, Tom, am I right that Masters of the Universe was basically a 30-minute toy commercial? Like,
yeah.
Well, what happened, and part of this I found out just from that TV shows that they had on Netflix.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
But where they said that they were trying to sell the toy to young kids, and they were saying, well, how are the kids going to know that there's like a storyline to do with this? They said, oh, well, we're going to put a little comic book in each. And this is just made up on the fly. They just made this up to lie to the guy to try to sell the thing. They said, we're going to put a little comic book in there for every kid that when they buy the toy, they can get this comic and read the story. So then the people at the toy manufacturer said, well, how's that going to work? The kids can't read. They're too young to read. And that's when he said, well, we're going to do a little feature film about He-Man. So they came to Lou Scheimer and said, desperately, we need you to do a special. And that's when Lou Scheimer said, why don't we do a full series?
Right.
And so that was the first time that you had a toy become a cartoon instead of the other way around.
Right.
Wasn't that the downfall of Black Star, though? Like the downfall of Black Star was that they never had the toys until a year after Black Star, premiered, right? Like,
well, and the other thing is we were supposed to do a second season, but whatever the network that it was on wanted to lower the budget, and it had a lot of special effects that we used, like backlighting and stuff like that for the flames and all that. And Lou just didn't want to make it cheaper looking. So he said, "Nah, we're not gonna lower our budget." So I think if they had had a second season, and then the toys came out, it would have been great. But the toys came out a little bit too late, and with only one season, it kind of just petered on the vine, Yeah. But I mean, because look, that was a cool with that dragon.
It was
that's what I'm saying. It was man.
It was like some like Burroughs stuff.
Oh, it was phenomenal.
They had the cool sword and shit.
Yeah. And I think it was like a half of another sword of the bad guy's sword.
Yeah, bro. It was.
That was only one season.
It was definitely a
Yeah, Ryan the
precursor show
Dragon.
that was like that thing. Yeah, bro. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total non sequitur, but what's his face? The Fleischers, Max Fleischer, wanted to do a John Carter, Warlord of Mars, animated, like a series of shorts, I guess, like those beautiful Superman shorts. And you can find the footage if you do like a YouTube search. You can find the test footage. A lot of it's like rotoscoped, you know, of like John Carter running and explaining like a hero who can leap 30 feet. But yeah, so just
it's kind of funny because
a little factoid there.
When we were at Hanna-Barbera working on Super Friends, and I don't know what the deal is with people, why they don't know things, but the Fleischer Superman, I remembered from when I was a kid, and I just thought, man, these things are so well animated. And
Beautiful.
The reason they're so well animated is that he's just got like a little square head.
Yeah.
You know, and it looks nothing like a human figure. It's got the shape of a human figure, but you can animate it because you can stretch and squash it and not break his rib cage.
What they were saying.
So I said, why don't we do a show like Super Friends, but actually make the characters animatable? Because it was hard to animate those other guys. And next thing you know, Bruce Timm comes up with this Batman.
It, bro. I was just getting ready to say that.
I know.
That's exactly. I watched that documentary on that. Man, that was impressive. I was going to ask you what you thought about that whole thing, because that was the return of the American muscle. And
it's also drawn overseas.
What?
No way.
Okay, because they made it sound like it wasn't on the document. In the documentary, they don't make it sound like it was drawn overseas.
I mean, the entire series itself looked like it was based on the Max Fleischer Superman.
I think it was.
Bruce Timm did. He did use that, and that his model sheet is based, whether they did it overseas or what. His model sheets, which were based off of that, that's what they based all that shit on.
God,
I was so psyched when that came out.
Because Bruce Timm was
Filmation.
Sorry, Tom, what did you just say?
I said Bruce Timm was over at Filmation for a while, and he was a character designer. And I'm sure we all, most of us, talk very highly about Filmation because Lou was such a nice guy and treated us so well. And even towards the end, when we were doing Brave Star, you had to do 80 feet of film per week. And a foot of film is 16 frames. So animation is 24 frames a second, which is 12 drawings because we shot everything on 2s. So it took 12 drawings for 1 second. But we get 80 feet done, and then that was basically, you had to kind of do that to be able to get your paycheck and make sure that they weren't yelling at you to do more work. But at the end, they started saying, if you can get 160 feet, we'll give you 2 paychecks. Nice. So you would get some scenes that were, okay, this is the week I'm going to work my butt off and get 160 feet done.
Right.
And get that double paycheck. And
God, you guys must have drew like lightning. Jesus.
Can't even imagine. Can't even imagine.
I don't think Brian understands.
I know all about.
Yeah.
I'm an animation fan going way back. I know a lot
about
like
actual.
Me and Anthony actually know like what goes into this. And
oh, you mean know as in like you can only know by actually doing it?
Right.
No, I haven't the faintest idea.
I mean, 160 feet.
No way.
Like 16 drawings per
That's
foot.
That's brutal.
Holy shit!
That's insane. It's insane.
And we had also we also would get contract work, so that there was always a section of the show that, because we had to do 65 episodes a year.
Yeah.
Now there's only 52 weeks in a year, so that means we got to do more than a show a week. Well, with like things like Scooby-Doo or the Flintstones, it was 13 episodes a season, because they would go 13 episodes because it was just Saturday. So it was 13 Saturdays. and then they would play it twice in reruns, and then that was a full year. Well, with He-Man, it's every single day, weekday, for the entire
That's what blew my
year.
mind. That's what blew my mind, because like He-Man isn't something special to me because I was the wrong age when it came out, right? But of course, I know how precious it is to the people that were coming up behind me, right? And you know, I just remember like coming home from school and like watching it because it was like a barbarian running around with a sword. What's not right? And then like seeing it the next day and being like, "This is on again."
Brian,
And
did you put on an animal skin briefs and go ahead and run around your house with a?
Yeah, that was
That's
me.
none of your business. I plead the fifth. I did.
Well, I had my underoos.
But
did
it
they
was
have
like-
Masters of the Universe underoos? I know I had the Superman underoos.
I know it's hard to
But,
say.
I mean-
They had a bunch of different ones. I can't remember.
To me, it blew my mind because I I had an idea from like reading, you know, magazines and books and stuff like that, anything I could get my hands on, how much work goes into animation, and I was just like, oh my god, like this is on every day, right? I was just like it blew my mind. Like, how is this even possible?
Well, like
That was
I'm
great.
saying, you know, Filmation gets a lot of crap because we had to cut so many corners.
Right.
But the number of talented people that worked at that studio that ended up working on Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid and all that sort of stuff, they all worked there at Filmation. And the background artists, I mean, those backgrounds for He-Man were amazing.
Yeah,
They
they
were,
were beautiful.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
beautiful.
Brave Star too. Brave Star was beautiful.
Yes,
too.
yes,
Uh-huh.
all the shows. And so we had such a talented group of people, and we all worked there for so long because it was the only game in town. So from 1981 till they closed in 89, everybody worked there. We were all friends. Everybody. So we got into a groove where it was no big deal to get these shows done. We could do it. You know, we knew what we were doing. And
I will
Plus,
never,
Filmation.
I will never
kept
make
American.
fun of those He-Man episodes again. Anybody I ever hear making fun of those episodes again, I'm gonna be like, hey, bro, let me tell you about how many feet they did and how many man. Let me tell you.
Well, keep in mind too, like Filmation, from what Tom's saying, Filmation was one of the only animation companies that were like, no, we're going to employ American animators. You know what I'm
100%.
saying? Like,
But also the way that animation has aged, it's charming. Do you know what I'm saying? All the things that back then I was just like, oh man, that looks so cheap. Oh, they reused that shot. You see that stuff now, and it like puts a smile on your face.
yeah.
It's got a different look to it. You can tell. You can tell when you look at it. You can see.
Yeah, Filmation had a style. If you look at all the Filmation shows, you can almost tell it's a Filmation show because the designers that they had were always the same designers. You know, they kept.
Yeah.
Lou was just a very faithful guy. You know, he really made sure that we were treated well. And with Hanna-Barbera,
it's good to hear.
It wasn't bad. You know, so don't get me wrong. We weren't treated badly, but we were a little bit more of just a piece of the cog instead of part of the reason the shows were good.
Yeah.
Right.
And at Filmation, if you notice at the end credits, the credits come up and there's 2 screens of animators because he wanted our names large enough so you could see it on the screen, and he holds it instead of scrolls it so you can look and find your name really easily.
That's pretty
and
cool.
everybody got their names on the screen for like 4 or 5 seconds. Hanna-Barbera, that thing went screaming by. You had no idea.
Yeah, to get a magnifying glass out.
There you go.
There I am. Oh, I'm stunned.
Right. Oh man. Well, you know,
So
it's
that
interesting
was, that
because
was important
I've never.
to him.
That's
Yeah,
good. That's what I'm
I've
saying.
never heard of anybody saying anything negative about him. I've never heard anybody say anything but like great stuff about him.
Yeah. And he was a character. I mean, he was really because he was so good with the kids and stuff, but yet he cursed like a sailor. But he would come into the room and you would see what you're doing and pat you on the back and say, good job. I never saw Bill or Joe. You know, I never saw them. They never came into the room. And I don't think you need to do that, but I still think it helps.
But it helps. But it helps. That's the thing.
Huge difference when it comes to running manpower. If you're not telling your people, man, hey man, look, that you did there, that was good.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
If all they ever hear is, hey, listen, can you fix this because you did this wrong? Hey, can you do this because you missed this? Did you miss this step? Right. If that's all you ever hear. If the person doesn't come in and say, hey, that shot you did right there, man, that looks really good, bro.
Yeah,
I really like the way you handle that shot. Yeah. And it makes you feel like, yeah, you know what? I want to do more shots like that, and I want to stay a little bit later.
It inspires loyalty too,
sure,
like yeah.
Well, and one of the things too is every day they would show dailies, and that's whatever was shot on the camera the day before. They would, and different groups got to go. You'd have the the layout department would go one day, and then the animators would go one day, and they split the animators I think into two groups because there were just so many of us. But so we'd get to go in and see what we did, which we never got to see until it was on the show at Hanna-Barbera. But because he was sitting in the room with us, he would point to something and say, okay, that scene right there, make that one of the scenes that we reuse.
Right.
So I had one like that where Beastman was kind of just in the center of the screen with his whip, and he whips off stage at He-Man, and then you cut and you see the whip come in, and He-Man grabs it, and then he pulls him over his head and throws him off stage. Okay.
Yeah.
So I did that scene, and I worked hard on it. It looked pretty good. And sure enough, Lou, that scene right there, anytime Beastman and He-Man fight, let's do that. Let's do that.
Well, it's like Roger Corman. Like Roger Corman, put all this money into like a movie called Battle Beyond the Stars, and you could see bits and pieces of that movie in like 20 other movies, and hear that music in like 20 other movies. Yeah. Waste not, want not.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, can I just address the chat really quick, because we got a lot of people here, and folks, seriously, if you want to ask Tom a question, just ask in the chat, and we shall relay that to him. Made in Hell, Jay Dalla, what's up? Ollie, what's up? Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight.
Derek's down there. Hey, let me actually, Tom, are you coming back to Louisiana anytime soon? Like any of the shows that we're going to be having up here?
Well, I don't know if Wizard World's going to do their show there this year. It's usually in January.
Yeah,
I know there's another showcase show in October.
Yeah, Tim invited me to it, but I think it'd be better if I wait a year. When you come back too often,
people get used to you.
If I do it every year, I always do well. It's never have I ever said, gosh, I wish I didn't come to this show, because it's always pretty good.
Yeah.
But with the smaller show, I think it's a little bit more risky to come quite as often.
No, I totally get that. I use the same thing, like, because if you do, I don't do. I don't do the same location twice in the same year, because it's.
But I'm good. I'm good friends with Tim, who runs that show, and so he's had me. He's had me at his comic store before, and I did a meeting there, and so I definitely will come back, because, like I said, number one, he treats me like a king. He's a really great guy, and his wife too. His whole family is just awesome.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. I deal with them all the time.
We'll come back there, but I think the next chance would be the Wizard show if Wizard finally gets going again.
Now, Tom also does commissions. Actually, do you do commissions, or you just sell original art? Like, there's a difference. There's a huge difference between the two.
I tend to do drawings and take them to the show with me.
Yeah.
And then at the show, I will sell those. But of course, what always happens is I don't want that. I want Skeletor. So then
go hit another animator.
So sometimes what I'll do is I'll take some commissions, like Friday, I'll do them Friday night, bring them back Saturday. And if it's a 3-day show, I'll do some Saturday night. So I basically get out of the show, go get something to eat, and then I go back to my room and I draw. and everything I do is in color because I want it to look like a cell on paper.
And it looks amazing. It looks exactly like the TV show. Now, let me tell everybody this. Tom's not a comic book artist. He doesn't do backgrounds. He does single characters. And so don't come to him and say, I need He-Man in hell battling, because that's not going to happen. But everything he does, I've seen his work at shows. It looks exactly like what it was on screen.
It's almost like I worked on the TV show.
I know, it's
almost like you drew
it there. It was almost like
almost
there when it happened.
It's almost like he did 160 feet of animating of that one character.
Well, Preston, didn't Tom meet you when he saw like some of your badass like Masters of the Universe paintings? Because those canvases are fantastic.
Me and Tom have a deep and personal relationship that I don't think we should exploit right here on this show. But I will say this, in the description, I put Tom's email address in case anybody does want like a piece of artwork for somebody who actually worked on these shows.
Yeah, man.
I'm not saying that you can just request anything because that's not a thing. But if you want like a picture of He-Man or Brave Star, Black Star, something like that, he might be able to accommodate you on that.
Oh, that's so cool.
What I do more than anything else, I always do the scene of him saying, I have the power holding the sword.
I've seen that. Yeah, and he does an amazing job on that. And I've also noticed you got a few Super Friends pieces in there too, like Batman, Robin.
Yeah, I did a piece. There's a con in Elkhart, Indiana, called the Hall of Heroes Con, and the guy owns a museum, like a kind of an animation comic book museum. And he had me do all of the good guys and all the bad guys from Super Friends. So it's a Legion of Doom and all the Super Friends heroes, and do them all in color, 11 by 14. And he's got that up in that in his museum, and then he allowed me to make prints of them. So I've got some of those available. And I did the same thing with He-Man. I've got all the He-Man characters, all the good guys, Skeletor with all the bad guys around him, and then She-Ra with all the good guys around her. And I've got some prints of those as well.
This is a little tech talky, but what kind of color do you use to go ahead and do you use Indian ink, right, or is it watercolor?
It's Copic markers.
Oh, Copics. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sweet.
And I do it very much like I said. I want these things to look like a cell on paper. So I do color them all. I don't like to do black and white stuff because it's just with animation line, it's just too thin and too light, and it just doesn't look as good. When it's color, you feel like you've really got something from the cartoon show, you know. And then I'll put a little bit of shading and a little bit of highlights just to make it look a little bit better. But they usually come out. I don't know if I've got one around here. Maybe I could.
They look amazing, is what they look.
I'd love to see one. I'd love to see one because the way Preston was describing them, they sound really, really cool.
You guys talk amongst yourselves, and I'll see if I have one.
Yes, sir. So,
all right. So we're gonna start writing a Thundar spinoff, right?
First, we have to get.
I'd be so all over that. You have no idea.
We'll just name it something else, and it'll look.
By the way,
oh, that's cool, dude. I've been looking for one of those.
Oh, yo, dude, if you want this, all right. I'll send it your way.
Oh, he's got it.
Not a problem.
Got it.
I found something that's kind of half done.
Oh,
so right, this is one I did for somebody, and don't get excited. It's got a background, but
oh snap!
But it's partially colored. See if I can get it in there.
Oh, you got Grayskull in there.
Yeah, so that's the kind of. Now the guy had to pay dearly for me to put Grayskull in there. But
I bet he did.
But yeah, so that's kind of the thing I do, and sketch covers too. I do some sketch covers and kind of keep it simple. But well, here's one I have. It's not colored yet, but let's see if you can see this one.
Oh, that one's amazing. Yeah, that's bad.
Oh, that's so cool.
The art that you do is so technical. Like it's so precise. It's crazy.
That's what animation is. You can't be imprecise.
Right. No wasted lines.
And like Tom's style of animation is a dying breed too. Like they're not producing any guys like him anymore.
No.
So
Well, I mean, this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but I don't know if you guys know who Phil Tippett is. He's like a animator. We was just released a movie called Mad God, or is in the process of releasing it. He's a stop motion artist. He animated like the Ed 209 and RoboCop. Remember that robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also did some of the stop motion for like Dragon Slayer and that sort of a thing. He just finished an animated film he's been working on for 30 years.
jeez.
So man, if you think like 165.
You see, honestly, I think what Tom's thinking right now is amateur.
Like 30.
Yeah, go back to the drawing table, son.
Look, I was just a cog in the wheel. I mean, there were like 65 animators there, so it's not like I'm a shining star. I was just one of the guys that just did the work, and
yeah, man.
It's like it was my life.
You know what? So was Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby was one of the guys that did the work.
Yeah,
so
guys
was
were
John
workhorses,
Burns
man.
and
Yes.
Bob Hall and all those guys.
Right. And it's
No,
gotta feel good knowing that people still love this stuff.
It
That
does.
people still want to watch your cartoons, and that it means means so much to them.
Well, what they always come up to me, and I mean, I'm telling you, I wish I got paid $1 every time somebody said this, but it's always, you drew my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that, I understand that because, and I try to explain to people, I said, I understand why you want my autograph, even though I don't understand why.
Right.
It's because it's me.
Right.
But I want Jack Kirby's autograph, and he can't
Right.
understand why.
Exactly. Exactly.
But because I do want Jack Kirby's autograph and have a number of them, by the way. He
those for sale.
I understand better than other people do about why people come to see me, because I wanted to meet Bob Clampett, And when I did, It was like, oh my gosh, this is Bob frickin' Clampett, the creator of Bugs Bunny. I mean, it was just so great. But it just feels weird being the person that is the one that, they want the autograph of. It's very humbling rather than being egotistical,
Right.
I think anytime you do something that you really love or you're really into, and I think it's always weird because you don't, this is something you do, you enjoy doing. This is your jam, and you see people and they're like, "Wow, man, this is so cool, man! I like, can you sign this and this, that, and the other?"
Yeah.
That's just, to you, you just like, well, it's just what I do. Like I don't.
Well, nobody ever came up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Bus Driver, can I get your autograph?"
Right.
No, that's a very thankless job. That's where their souls go to die.
Yeah.
Instead-
Tom, I gotta ask real quick. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, instead of asking for my autograph, they just peed in the aisle.
They left you a little gift. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here's the
God.
tip.
Oh, so nasty. Did you ever meet Mel Blanc by any chance?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Man,
One of the first days at Hanna-Barbera. I'm fresh. This is like December of 78. And I'm sitting there next to this girl that she ended up becoming a good friend, but she was an assistant as well. She'd been there for a year or so she was pretty seasoned compared to this rookie guy.
Right.
And all of a sudden she comes up to me, she goes, "Come with me." And I kind of followed her down the hall, and there was a couple of stairways you had to go down, and we get in there, and we're in the recording room, and they were doing an episode of the new Fred and Barney show. So Mel Blanc was there because, of course, he was Barney. The guy that did the Fred and Wilma and Betty were all there doing an episode of the show. So I got to listen to Mel Blanc be a dinosaur, and then he was Barney. And So it was pretty cool. So afterwards, I got to meet him, and I got an autographed picture of him with, he's kind of, I don't know if he's standing or sitting, but he's got all his characters like on his shoulder and all that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself then, so now you're talking about, I haven't even been 1 week in the business, and I'm already thinking if I ever have a career like that, I'm going to do the same thing. So I have a picture that you could buy with Godzilla. I've got Charles Brown on my shoulder. I've got Roger Rabbit on my head.
I use that as the show card. That's
right. Yeah, so that's what I use usually as the picture when somebody invites me to a show. That's my picture to get people to come.
It's amazing.
Good shit.
We're going on almost 2 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. But if anybody wants anything from Tom, except for what you don't want, you can't, you know what I'm saying, right? Anyway, all his information is in the description, so check him out. Get yourself some original art. We are out of here.
Peace and love, folks.